Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so excited that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. We are committed to inspiring families to read more together, because we believe reading is the start of a beautiful, lifelong conversation between you and your kids. Our guest today is Gregg Millman. He is here to celebrate his wonderful Kandy Kingdom Saga. And just a moment, I'm going to be letting you know that Gregg is joining us from Los Angeles in California. If you haven't heard, I am really happy to tell you I will be out in the Los Angeles area, just actually a little bit south of Los Angeles, on October 6th to be part of the Orange County Children's Book Festival. It is the largest book festival in North America. We're so excited that the Reading with Your Kids podcast will have an exhibit booth at the festival, and we'll be having so many guests at the booth. Dennis Matthew will be there. Marla Humor is going to try to stop by. Helena Bailey is going to join us. Lisa Caprelli is going to be joining us. You'll be able to check out their books, get them to autograph their books. I'll be out there. I can autograph my book. I'll also be out there to perform. I'll be doing 2 wonderful magic shows on the Illustrator stage at around 12:30 and at around 2:30. Be sure to join us, the Orange County Children's Book Festival. It is absolutely free and open to the public. It's happening in Costa Mesa, California. Check it out. October 6th. Join us at the Orange County Children's Book Festival. Be sure to come over to the Reading with Your Kids booth. Well, we may have you as part of a future episode of the show. Speaking of the Orange County Children's Book Festival, I mentioned the fact that one of the people who will be joining us at the Reading with Your Kids booth at the Orange County Children's Book Festival is Lisa Caprelli. Lisa Caprelli is the author of Unicorn Jazz. She's a driving force behind Unicorn Jazz, because Unicorn Jazz isn't just an amazing children's picture book. It really is a kind of like a mindset. They have music, and they have activity books and coloring books, and they also have a beautiful Unicorn Jazz plushie toy. It's really wonderful, and I really love Lisa and her attitude. She tells me that she thinks that what makes Unicorn Jazz so unique is her kind personality and her curiosities. She's a shy unicorn with a musical note for a tale, and her talent is realized in story after story, especially with her musical voice. Lisa told me that to her, it was really important to create the Unicorn Jazz Friendship Song that's available on most music platforms to encourage the love of arts, books, creativity, and stories before they created this well-loving unicorn who goes on to meet many new friends as she explores a world of imagination, friendship, and belonging. I could talk about Unicorn Jazz all day, but the best thing for you to do is to go to their website, unicornjazz.com. Check it out for yourself. It really is a beautiful character that you will want as part of your child's life. Unicorn Jazz, unicornjazz.com. Joining us on the line right now from beautiful Los Angeles in California. You may not know our guest's name, but if you have a pulse and if you've watched television at all in the last decade or so, you've been exposed and been entertained by some of his work. Please welcome to the show the author of the brand new middle grade book, The Kandy Kingdom Saga, Gregg Millman. Gregg, how are you?
Excellent. Thank you for having me. Very excited.
I'm really excited to have you on. As I mentioned, Gregg is responsible for a whole lot of work. One of the movies parents out there may be familiar with is One Crazy Cruise, which is a Nickelodeon hit. And you're also responsible for a lot of the taglines and advertisements that are just part of our day-to-day living.
Yes, yes, a very varied writing career from taglines to Nickelodeon movies.
One of the things that I loved as I was looking through your bio was the a tagline that you created for, I guess it's the Bates Motel, and it was
Yes.
Norman is so close to normal.
That was actually, that was one of the first taglines when I went from doing screenwriting full time to doing some advertising, and one of the first things was that Bates Motel show, and it's a creepy show, so it was fun to try to write the tagline.
Very, very creepy show, and one of the reasons that jumped out on me is that my daughter and I watched that really creepy show together, and that I remember that tagline very well. We both laughed at it the first time we heard it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I want to get into talking about the different types of writing that you've done, but first we should find out what the Kandy Kingdom Saga is all about.
Excellent. Yeah. So the Kandy Kingdom Saga is about two seventh graders who are gamers, and they play a game, sort of like Candy Crush, but it's a candy action adventure kind of, video game, and they become the world champs of it. And they're celebrating, and they don't realize that the game was sort of a recruiting tool. So the Kandy Kingdom from the video game is actually a real world in an alternate dimension. And because the girl, Cassie, became the sweetest one, the greatest candy warrior, they get recruited and they get transported to this magical world where they're sort of drawn into the war between the good guy Sweet Treats and the evil Sour Powers. So, it's sort of a fun adventure in a Candyland, but, I've grown up on all the different worlds of candy, from Candyland the board game to Willy Wonka and Candy Crush, and, but I thought it would be fun to sort of give it a slightly darker, more action-y twist with a real war between the two sides in the candy world. And so it's going to be a 4 or 5 book series, and at the end of each book, they go into a portal into a new world that's related to candy. I don't want to give that away, but so that's
well, I certainly can appreciate the idea of getting sucked into a video game. My niece put Candy Crush on my Kindle for me anytime I'm traveling, and I was telling Greg, we just got back from Costa Rica and actually got stranded at Charlotte Airport overnight, and I got sucked into Candy Crush.
Yeah, I did
hours.
too. Yeah, I've been down that rabbit hole, and so that definitely sort of all those moments sort of imprinted on my brain and were part of the creative process for sure.
We'll talk a little bit about your creative process and where you kind of get your inspirations from.
Sure. I guess when I'm doing stuff like Kandy Kingdom Saga, I try to do a fun mix of fantasy stuff. So obviously it's a world of candy. So the fun part of the process is to try to come up with the craziest candy land, candy world things you could imagine. Whether it's a chocodile, like a crocodile made of chocolate who, jumps out at you, or a butterscotch bog you get stuck in, or, a sprinkle storm. So part of it's just the fun of fantastical, amazing candy things. And then what I also try to do is sort of ground the characters in something a little real, maybe something from my childhood, or I have an 8-year-old, now 9-year-old son, something that I see he's going through. So I think it's fun to see the characters, and you relate to them a little more if they seem a little more grounded, a little more real, but they're still dealing with, amazing, fantastical things.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, one of the things that you are incredibly talented at is saying a lot with very few words. Being able to create an image, the image of the chocolate crocodile that you created with just one word. The minute you said it, was bang! It's right there in my head. And
that's funny. My wife says I talk too much, so I guess it's good that on the page I'm short and sweet.
Well, how did you become so adept at being able to come up with these taglines and names that are that express so much in so few words?
I think it's just a long, sort of a long and varied history of writing. I started writing in news, and so I randomly sort of fell into writing for TV news and cable news. I worked at MSNBC and CNBC, and yeah, you write, headline introductions for news segments that have to be kind of snappy and memorable, and you write the sort of the chyron that goes at the bottom of the screen. Mm-hmm. And so you're trying to come up with, catchy, short, phrases, and the same thing when you're writing the scripts that the journalists are going to read on air. So yeah, I think that having the news background was very useful in keeping things short and punchy. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that probably served me well once I went into advertising and then, also screenwriting as well.
Do you have a favorite? Now, I guess it's unfair to ask you if you have a favorite, but now that you've written for TV, you've written scripts, you've taglines, written for news, now you've written a middle grade novel. They're all very different, very different ways of expressing yourself. Is one of them a favorite right now?
Yeah, I mean, just writing for kids, especially the book series now, is sort of my new obsession. I mean, I've recently in my career been writing a lot of things for kids and tweens and teens, from, like the Nickelodeon movie to other things. But yeah, this was the first, novel that I ever written. And it's just so many things you can do in a novel that you can't do in a screenplay or a TV script. You can get inside the characters' heads much easier. In a movie or TV show, you have to have a voiceover narration. Mm-hmm. If you want to hear what the character's thinking, which can get a little cheesy. And so, yeah, the opportunities to sort of explore and be a little more experimental in a novel are fun. Like in this book, I had each chapter narrated by a different character. So you kind of get a rotating cast of people who are telling the story. It's, there's just things you can do in a novel that are fun and harder to do in other medium.
Do you think it was easier going from a style of writing that required you to be very concise to being more expansive? Or do you think it would have been more difficult, starting as a novelist and then having to become very, very concise in your writing?
I would imagine it's probably harder to start as a novelist and then try to get more concise. I mean, if you're good at being short and sweet, the opportunity to go a little longer, seems fun. I don't know, because I never went from novelist to screenwriter, but everything in a screenplay is sort of, the action lines in between the dialogue should be short, and and then character speeches don't go too long unless it's the main monologue in the movie. So yeah, I think going from TV and movies to novels is maybe easier, but yeah.
Talk about your son. You mentioned you have a 9-year-old son now. How did he contribute? How did being a dad and how did having him in your life contribute to the Kandy Kingdom Saga?
Yeah. My son Hugh, he's 9 and he's just started 4th grade. Yeah, he was an integral part. He was my partner, my co-writer. It was just sort of random. When I was writing movies and TV shows, even if it was for Nickelodeon, he was a little bit young to be watching them. Mm-hmm. So like when I wrote One Crazy Cruise a few years ago, it was a little above, age appropriate for him. So this just happened to coincide. I was writing a book for 8 to 12-year-olds and, he's 8 to 12, but I was writing it because he and I read so many of these, now middle grade books together. And I just fell in love with all these books. I mean, we read so many different series together. Like now we're reading the Timmy Failure series. We read all the Origami Yoda books, the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, so, I just passionately fell in love with all the books, love them as much as he does. So I started writing one, and then I just would start updating him at night. Like, oh, this is what I worked on today. And it was during bath time because we were alone and just talking. And then he would start saying, oh, that's cool. Well, what if you did this? And what if you did that? And yeah, so it just sort of became a collaboration. He actually came up with a lot of the ideas for the sequel books, like the different worlds that the characters are going to go into. And, yeah, so it was fun. And then also, so he came up with ideas and he would pitch me ideas. And then he was also sort of like my focus group at home at night. So I could tell like in real time, like, okay, the people I'm writing for, did they find this interesting? So yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I think he enjoyed seeing what I do and being involved in it. So,
well,
yeah.
As the host of the Reading with Your Kids podcast, I'm so happy to hear that you read with your 9-year-old.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know what's normal or what most parents do. We obviously read with the kids when they were younger. And then, yeah, like I said, maybe just because I fell in love with all these novels, I always ask my wife if I can do the reading with you, and she reads to our younger daughter. But he's into these chapter books and the middle grade books now. And yeah, once we read one in a series, we just go online and download the next one and just roll through them. So yeah, it's great reading with your children. I definitely highly recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, you're mentioning other families. I think with a lot of families, they start. I think people get into it with the wrong idea. I think a lot of families get into, we're going to read to our kids because that's how they're going to learn how to read. And it's so important. We want our kids to learn how to read. And then the kids start reading on their own, and the parents sit back and they'll, I did it. It's great. They can read by themselves. I don't need to do it anymore. And I think that they're missing so much. They don't realize that there's obviously helping your kid learn how to read is so important, but I think it's not nearly as important as the conversations that you have with your kids, and it's the foundation of a lifelong conversation that obviously you and your son are still having through these awesome middle grade series that you're reading.
I totally agree. Yeah, see, I mean, reading with your kids when they're 4 or 5 or 6 and learning how to read versus reading with them 8, 9, 10, like you're saying, there's different skills that they're still learning, like reading comprehension and how much do they understand from what they're reading. So even though you thought, oh yeah, they already know how to read, I'm good to go. Like you're saying, it's sort of a long process to get a deeper understanding of books. And so the more you read with them, the more you help with that. And then also, like you're saying, it's just a basis for a conversation. Like it's always interesting. Well, what did he think of that? How did he process that? Like one thing I've noticed in a lot of the books we've been reading is they can be a lot darker, I think, than books I remember growing up, as a kid. And, like there may be like we read the Max Einstein book and, by James Patterson, and the lead character is a homeless girl. I mean, she's completely homeless in New York City, and they don't hide it at all. In the Timmy Failure books, he has an absentee father who it's sort of a through line in the books is that he pops in and out of the kid's life, and it's kind of sad. So yeah, I was actually surprised how kind of dark some of these things could be, which makes for interesting conversations with your kid, because how do they react to things that they might not have thought about? I mean, if you're not homeless, it's hard for a kid to imagine what it's like to be homeless, So, yeah, I think reading the books and having a conversation about them is great for parents and kids.
Yeah, and it's so much, parents are always told, be aware of what's going on in your kids' lives and be aware of what's going on in school. It's been a long time since my kids were in middle school, but I remember sitting down and asking them, so what went on in school today? How was your school day? It was like, good, nothing, okay.
Yeah,
fine.
Well, it's like that with my son Hugh too, and we're close and we talk a lot about stuff. For some reason, that's like with parents and kids, you say what happened at school, and like you just get nothing. Like, I don't know if they don't remember or they're just like, school's over, I'm having fun now, I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about that, but yeah, it's really hard to figure out what they experienced during the day for some reason. But yeah, with books, like he's more likely to tell me, oh, this cool thing happened in the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, or, rather than, oh, this happened at school today. So yeah, I think books are an interesting way to sort of get inside your children's heads.
Yeah, and it's a great way too to open those up. My kids would be like, like we said, oh yeah, I forgot what happened at school. I just left 10 minutes ago and it's all gone.
Right.
But if you're reading about something that's related to something in school, then it's like, oh yeah, so and so at school, he's kind of going through this, or she's kind of going through this, and so it's a good way to get insight. And so there's so many benefits, and I'm so happy that you guys are doing that. One of the things that you mentioned was that in the Kandy Kingdom Saga, that each chapter is narrated by a different character.
Yes.
Tell us about a couple of those characters.
So the two main characters are, well, even before I get to that, I was just going to say, like, that was sort of influenced by a lot of the books I read with Hugh, where I've seen authors do that. They have a rotating cast of narrators, and I just thought it was always interesting to get different perspectives on the same story. So in this book, the two main characters are a boy and a girl in 7th grade, and they're polar opposites. So Cassie, the lead girl, is sort of impetuous and runs into things without thinking them through. And Landon, her best friend, is sort of neurotic and overthinks everything. That's probably more like me. And so they see things differently because she's just like, let's go for it. And he's like, is that a good idea? I'm not sure that's a good idea. Mm-hmm. So she really wants to go to Kandy Kingdom, even though it's dangerous. And he's the one who's like, maybe not the best idea. So they each narrate most of the chapters. And then, I thought it would be fun to like get into the heads of some of the candy creatures. There's Sir Percivalius, who's like the lead knight who becomes their mentor, their Yoda figure. And he's very proper. So it's fun to hear him sort of narrate in a very formal way. And then there are some soldiers from the candy world, they talk a little more like pirates. They're a little more rambunctious. Even though they're good guys, they're kind of like, a little more aggressive. Mm-hmm. And then also more in the human world, you hear from other characters like the mean girl who appears to be an enemy, and things happen with that. You get inside her head and you get to hear what she's thinking, about what's going on. So I've had my father read it and he was surprised by like how, there's a war and also like, there's different characters narrating. And he was like, is that something kids can handle? The change in perspective. So, I mean, from my experience, they can, but it's definitely, it's a different way of writing it versus just having one narrator.
And I think you hit on something that's important. It's that, people, I think people downplay, a lot of abilities of kids, and they sit down and they go, well, most kids can't handle this, or are they ever going to be able to understand this? And the fact of the matter is some kids won't. The fact of the matter is some adults don't understand a lot of things.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting point too, because, will they understand it? And if, like you said, sometimes the thing just goes over your head if you don't get it, if you're not old enough to understand it. Like if you don't understand really what it means to be homeless, I don't think it's a problem if you read that book. And if you do start to understand it, then, it might affect you emotionally. So I mean, right. The idea of challenging kids and giving them something. I always, in my writing, I've always wanted to make the kids talk a little smarter than someone might normally talk, just to push things a little more rather than underestimating what kids can understand and handle. I think it's better to, go the other way and challenge them.
Absolutely. And that's, one of the benefits, again, you were talking earlier about the benefits of reading with our kids once they become independent readers. And it's when you're reading with your kids, you're able to help them push a little bit forward and kind of read or listen to a story that might be above their abilities at the moment, but it helps them get to that point quicker.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember in my own elementary and middle school reading things in a class where I didn't understand it, but my parents sort of literally, I remember they sat down and read some of the stuff with me, and it wasn't like, oh, this is too hard for you. Let's wait until you're ready. It's like, no, let's challenge you and push you and see if we can get through this, together. So Yeah, like you've been saying, like just the act of reading together, I think fosters a sense that, parents are there for you and they're there to help you rather than, if you're reading on your own, which, I mean, my son reads alone all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we only read together, but like I said, having that sense of togetherness and learning things together, my hope, or I imagine, is a good thing for kids.
It absolutely is. One of the most wonderful things about our recent trip to Costa Rica is that my 23-year-old daughter came down with us, and we experienced the rainforest together, and we experienced the volcanoes together, and it was, it was just as much fun as the first time, she was experiencing something when she was 5 or 6 or 9 years old. It's just
that's awesome. That's so great to hear because my kids are so young and they, they're very close with us and they'll still, hold our hands when they walk. So yeah, I was trying to imagine what it's like when they're in college and like, do they want to have those experiences with you? So it's cool to hear that can continue.
Well, they want to have those experiences with you when you have them. I think a lot of families, they read with their kids and they get to read by themselves and they go, okay, go off to elementary school, go to middle school, you're on your own.
Good luck.
And then it's like, why aren't they affectionate with me now when they're in college and they're adults? It's like,
right.
Well, you kind of stop that.
That's great. That's so cool that to see them, a 23-year-old, experience something new for the first time with you, like a volcano or something like that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it was really fun. It was an active volcano. Well, I mean, they weren't spitting lava at the moment, but it was, like there were these shelters, like then, as we're going up the mountain, they're like, well, this is a shelter. If you hear this alarm, it means the volcano is erupting. You have to go here and here. But then when we get to the top, there was a thunderstorm came through, and our guide's like, yeah, the volcano I'm not worried about, but this lightning, we got to get out of here.
That could be a real threat. Yeah, so, that's amazing. I think, kids love volcanoes. I know we actually did a report on volcanoes last year and made a little diorama of it and read about it. Was an active volcano in Hawaii. So I can't imagine what going to one with a child is like. That's awesome.
It's really cool. And one of the, we're hiking up the mountain to the top and to look down into the crater. And we're just hiking up a mountain. Then we get to the top to the crater and then you look down like, oh, whoa, I have never seen this before.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Well, you talked a little bit about the Kandy Kingdom Saga becoming a series, and you're going to take it to different worlds. This sounds like an absolute no-brainer in terms of turning it into an animated series. Any hopes of that?
Well, that's funny. So that's how it started. Was that I just had that idea. It was also there was a movie, The Last Starfighter, from when I was growing up, and that. It's a sci-fi movie about aliens, but the beginning of the writing thing is the same, that there's a video game and it's a way that the aliens recruit this kid who becomes, the best starfighter because he's playing the video game. And then it turns out all that stuff is real. That was my idea, and it was for an animated series. And so I sort of worked up the pitch and the characters and the world I pitched it around a little bit, and like most things, it's hard to get traction with various projects for whatever reason. But I actually got a positive response from a couple of the studios and networks where I pitched it, and then those executives would give me feedback, and I would improve the pitch and then take it the next place. So at a certain point, I just decided if I can't make it an animated series right now, I'm just going to write it as a novel. So. Yeah, I mean, it would be amazing if after writing the series, then it went back the other way and someone wanted to turn it into an animated series for sure. That's always been in my mind. And when I'm writing it, I'm probably thinking, like a screenwriter in the sense of having these big, exciting set pieces. Like when you're writing an action movie, you have those memorable moments that are big budget and special effects and over the top, and those are the things that like people might remember from the movie. So when I'm writing the novel, it's sort of, that's how I'm thinking, is like, what amazing sequences can we have in this, So yeah, that could translate back the other way to an animated series. Would be amazing.
Well, that would be amazing, and we'd be able to sit back and say, "Yeah, we talked, we talked to Gregg before, before the animated series, before the app, before the game." That's
right,
and that's one of the really cool things about the time that we're living in right now is that, all these things are possible.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about that is, and it makes sense in Hollywood, TVs and movies are so expensive to make. The reason there's so many superhero things and sequels and spin-offs and things based on books is because, they're spending a lot of money, obviously, and they don't want to gamble on something that's a bigger risk. So if it was a book, they can read the book, they understand the world, they see there was an audience for it. It's a lot easier, obviously, to invest in something like that. So in Hollywood, pitching an original idea that's your original idea, not based on anything, is trickier, and more of a challenge. And if you write the book and then pitch the movie or TV version, it's easier for them to visualize it and understand, what you meant when you were, in your 15-minute pitch. It's harder to understand if you read the book. You get the whole world. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense that books help, become TV shows and movies. So, it would be amazing if it went back the other way. And if not, it's just the fun book series that I hope readers enjoy.
Well, I can't end the interview before I just ask you, since you've had so much success writing all these different mediums, what advice do you have to an aspiring author or somebody who's kind of hitting the wall and thinking, I can't do this?
Well, obviously stick with it. If it's your passion, people say that all the time, don't give up. But more specifically, useful things. Someone asked me that question the other day. There's things that I've learned, through my career, like, in Hollywood, you tend to get sort of pigeonholed. Like, I sold that Nickelodeon movie. It was a kid teen thing. And so then it becomes easier to sell your next project if it's a similar kid or tween thing. And so Hollywood sort of makes you focus, even if you don't want to, even if you think, I'd love to write a 16th century historical costume drama. And it's like, no, you just wrote that Nickelodeon movie. We'd rather have another kid movie from you. But I think it's useful to, as your career goes on, to sort of focus and, become an expert in one genre or one topic, or, it's like people want to read that once they see that you're doing it well once, they want to come back for it. Even J.K. Rowling, she wrote that adult political book about a small election in Great Britain after all the Harry Potter stuff. And then after that, then she went back and wrote a Harry Potter stage play and then 2 more spin-off movies. So, even J.K. Rowling, sticks to one area for the most part. I think, focusing at early in your career, I think it's great to experiment. I did too. I wrote sci-fi and action and dark dramas and cop shows and all this stuff. And then, I think eventually when you find what you're good at, what you like doing, it makes sense to sort of focus and stick with it.
Well, we want folks to be able to focus and find out more about the Kandy Kingdom Saga and more about Gregg Millman. So where can folks go online to connect with you?
So my website is greggmillman.com, Gregg, M as in Mary, ILLMAN.com. And there's information about the book series, the Nickelodeon movie, and there's also a blog that I'm writing sort of in character as the Kandy Kingdom is angry at the author Gregg Millman for claiming that he made up all this stuff when really the Kandy Kingdom is a real world. So I'm wanted dead or alive by the Kandy Kingdom. And so the blog updates are written as if the king is after me for lying and saying all this stuff is made up when it's actually real. So, so that's on the website too.
We want you back absolutely alive to talk about the future books in the Kandy Kingdom Saga. We've had so much fun talking to the author of Book 1 in the Kandy Kingdom Saga series, Gregg Millman. Gregg, thanks so much for being part of the show.
Thank you, Jed. It was a lot of fun. I'd love to come back anytime, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be a debut author. The name of her debut book is Can You Save the Day? Our guest will be Shannon Stalker. She'll be here joining us from Kentucky. We hope you will join us as well. We also hope you'll be joining us at the Orange County Children's Book Festival October 6th at Costa Mesa, California. It's free and open to the public. Be sure to come down to the Reading with Your Kids exhibitor booth. We'll give you an autograph. You can meet many of the authors that you've heard here on the show. You can also see my magic show. That's October 6th at Costa Mesa, California, the Orange County Children's Book Festival. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Gregg Millman. Be sure to check out the Kandy Kingdom Saga. Also want to thank my producer, Fatima Khan. Be sure to check out our newly renovated website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can also check out Fatima's blog there. I also want to thank my beautiful wife for all of the support that she gives me. And we want to thank you. Thank you so much for being part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. We so very much appreciate the fact that you are helping us inspire families to spend more time reading together, to start that lifelong conversation. I also want to thank you for taking the time to make the world a better place. And, of course, you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.